Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 4 of 2021. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers and follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag for a 200% sign-up bonus. Please visit MyBookie and use the promo code ODDSBREAKERS. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs, sponsor the website and the podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com. Become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, we have a great show for you today. Getting right into it. Mr. David Bearman from ESPN, the Deputy Director of Sports Betting, is coming on to help break down a few playoff games and talk a little bit about some of his sports shows and sports betting shows on ESPN. Very excited to get David back on. David definitely has a passion for sports betting, just like all of you listeners out there. After David, I'm going to get into some college basketball plays and breakdowns of some of the big games for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for your viewing and sports wagering pleasure. So, going to do that at the end. But first, we are going to go into some betting spots for some of these teams that could regress back to the mean. And we're going to start with NCAA basketball shooting percentage. We're looking at teams that shot over 52% and average less than 44% on their season. So the last game, they shot it really well, but they usually don't shoot all that well. Starting out, you have New Orleans, shot 64.8%, and they average 43.8%. You have Arkansas Pine Bluff, shot 59.3% at 38 and averaged 38%. You have Eastern Washington, shot 58.8% and averaged 43.5%. You have College of Charleston, shot 58.8% and 43.2%. Sam Houston State, 55% they shot last game. They averaged 41.4%. Some regression potential there. And Tennessee State shot 54.3% and averaged 42%. Detroit shot 54.2% and they averaged 40.6%. Idaho State shot 53.8% and they averaged 43.7%. Houston Baptist shot 53.1% and they averaged 41.8%. Appalachian State shot 52.8% and they averaged 43.5%. And that's all of those. Going on to the other direction, we're going to look at some teams that shot very poorly but average very well. We're going to look at teams that shot under 38%, but they actually average over 46%. There's usually less of these, but they are outliers because you might want to be on them next game because they're going to hopefully get back to normal. Starting out, we have Southern Illinois, shot 36.5% last game, but they averaged 46%. I think they're on a COVID pause, though. Wake Forest shot 36.8% and they averaged 46.5%. They've just been doing very bad in the ACC. Bellarmine shot 37.3% and they averaged 46.2%. That's a very interesting school to me, Bellarmine. They've been one that I kind of want to be on. Next one, we have USC. They averaged 47.3%, but last game they shot at 38%. So that's all the ones that we have for that category. And obviously you have to look at their schedule and everything else that goes into a handicap. But these are just some ones to think of. we're going to look at college basketball 3-point percentage the last 3 games. We're looking for discrepancies here. Southern Illinois, 54% is what teams shot against them their last 3 games, average. So they're popping threes against them. And Southern Illinois gives up 40%, which is still a little bit high. So they probably don't guard the perimeter well. Here's one. Arkansas State, last 3 games, clubs hit 48.4% when they average 35.9% defending the 3. Next one, Seton Hall. Teams shot 47.5% when they average 36.4% guarding the 3. Marist, last 3 teams, 45.1%, and they average 32.9% guarding the 3. Texas El Paso, 44.9% shot against them when they average 32.3%. Looking at the next one down, I'm looking for at least 8 points of discrepancy here. NC State, 43.3% when they average 35.3%. They're usually decent at guarding the 3. I know Florida State just went nuts over them last week. Vanderbilt the same, 43.2% when they average 32.4% defending the 3. Kentucky 42.9% when they average 32.8% defending the 3. And that's about it for that category. Next we have free throws. Which teams are going against teams that can't miss from the free throw line? Illinois State, unfortunately, 91.3% is their last 3 teams average shooting free throws versus them. We have Charlotte, 90.7%, their last 3 teams. Arkansas State, 89.4% team shot free throws. Boise State, 88.1%, but Boise State's still winning all these games, as you see. UC Santa Barbara, 87.8% the last 3 games. Southern Illinois, 86.5%. And they're on this category every single time, it seems. UC San Diego, 85.7%, but they just started their season, so throw that one out. Nebraska Omaha, 85.5%. And believe it or not, Michigan's in this category. 83.3% teams are shooting against Michigan. 83.3% teams are shooting against Marist their last 3 games. Now, Michigan, even though teams are hitting free throws, they're still covering big spreads. They're a very interesting team, and we're going to talk about them coming up in our basketball section of this show. If we look at strength of schedule, we can see if teams had a very hard schedule or if they've had an actual pretty easy schedule. Penn State, they've been on a COVID pause, but they've had a hard schedule, ranking second, 51 on non-conference. Pretty tough. St. Joseph's is 1-9. Strength of schedule ranks 6th. And their non-conference ranks 16th. They could possibly get better. They're only 1-9, but maybe there's going to be some value on them. Boston College is one of them too. 7th and 20th. You just saw them beat Miami, and I'm still kicking myself. It was a strong lean of mine that I never took. Kentucky, their strength of schedule ranks 13th in the nation, and their non-conference ranks 8th. So they played the tough teams in their conference as well. Indiana, 14th, and their non-conference was 49th. Let's look at some of the other outliers here. On the other side of the coin, Drake, their schedule only ranks 304th, non-conference 310th. And they're still kicking the heck out of teams and have a great ATS margin, so I don't want to mess with them. Boise State's there. They're still winning games, but their strength of schedule only ranks 292nd with a 77th non-conference. Then you have Utah State, 254th is what their schedule ranks, and non-conference is 93rd. St. Louis, 238th, and their non-conference was 226th. And obviously I'm trying to find good teams here that had easy schedules. Furman, 195th is what their schedule ranks, and 157th non-conference. Furman is ranked 81st. And you can get all this information on KenPom itself. Loyola Chicago, 189th in their non-conference, ranks 117th. So some of those teams could be a little bit overvalued, being that they had it pretty easy. Without further ado, my friends, let's get into some NFL football with our guest, Mr. David Bearman. And now I'm excited to welcome back to the Odds Breakers, the deputy editor of sports betting at ESPN and a passionate Miami Dolphins fan, Mr. David Bearman from ESPN.com. You can follow him on Twitter at DBearmanESPN. David, we are in the playoffs, and how has your 2021 been treating you?
It's better than 2020, as I'm sure everybody will agree. It's been good. We had a great national championship the other night where I did extremely well on, which was good because I did so bad during the course of the college football season that, it was good to get some back. But it was the flip side of the NFL. Did great all year. Finished third in my local super contest and brought in a lot of money, and then gave it all back during the wild card weekend. So hopefully we'll all, do well this weekend during divisional round.
Oh yeah, for sure. And, yep, football was good to me last weekend for wild card. Not great, just a little bit good, I would say. I was probably in the black. Basketball was a little bit not good, so I kind of even out there. But still gonna wait for that giant week that we all love, right?
Absolutely.
Those week when it's you're like 7-2 or something like that. I'm feeling pretty good about this weekend though. So
me too.
I'm excited to talk about the stuff, and I think the books are going to be nervous after this podcast, baby. So I got a question for you about the Dolphins, and I saw you tweeting there, David. You know that as a Dolphins fan, you were talking about Devonte Smith and hoping that you get him in the first round. Mm-hmm. Do you think he would be that big of a game changer for the Dolphins offense?
I'm comparing it to what has amounted to a low bar as a Dolphins fan when it comes to their offensive weapons. And everybody's been very critical of Tua recently, and I've been a staunch defender of him only because I don't think we have enough data, 9 games, and the weapons that I watched during the latter half of the season as the team was close to a playoff berth, and obviously the last game didn't go very well, they don't have any wide receivers. Devontae Parker's their best one, and he loved the guy, but he can't make it through a game without getting injured. And Preston Williams was out the 2/3 of the year. Jakeem Grant is as big as I am, and he's short, and no one's ever heard of Lynn Bowden, and they don't have the weapons. So I look at it as what would make Tua an all-pro quarterback? Weapons, and hopefully weapons he's familiar with. So I think someone like Devonte Smith, who Tua has had experience playing with and is a game changer in college, would be somebody that would help the Dolphins offense. I've heard all of the feedback that, it's one thing to be a guy in college, and people were making up that, the linebacker was covering him. Yeah, on one play, a linebacker was covering him, but 3 plays earlier, he caught one on the sideline that I've never seen someone catch the ball like that before. I think that he would be a game changer in the NFL. I know he's not that big, but from what I've read, from what I've heard, and from some of the people that I know who scout this type of thing, he's smart, and he knows what he's doing, and he is a game changer in the way that people with the average football IQ can't see, because they don't know the routes the guy is running. They don't know the speed that he's switching. And from what I read in a couple of scouting reports, they haven't seen someone of his caliber in terms of football IQ, route running, what he's doing. And there's a big difference between a Stephon Diggs and other players in the NFL. There's a difference between why Devontae Adams is so good, while Michael Thomas is so good. Beyond the fact that they're NFL All-Pros, they run the right routes. They know when to speed up, when to slow down, how to read a defense, how to get on with a quarterback. And everything I've read about Devonta is that you watch some of the routes he ran the other night where he slowed down, linebacker came in and then took off right after him. You don't see that type of IQ out of every wide receiver. And I think with the way he plays and a familiar quarterback back there, I actually do think he can be a game changer.
Well, I first of all, last year during the draft, when the Raiders drafted Henry Ruggs, I really didn't like that pick. And listeners would remember that I said that I thought that Devonte Smith is still on Alabama and better than Henry Ruggs. And I can't say he is yet, obviously, because only one of them's in the NFL. And what I will say is that Henry Ruggs at least did stretch out the field for the Raiders, for Las Vegas this year. But looking back, I think the Raiders could have done a lot better trading down or getting something to help them in a different position, right?
Sure. I just think that people, and I'm not saying it's wrong, a lot of people put stock into the size of the wide receiver. And you look at, the big Megatron type players who can out jump everybody and is just that massive guy that you can throw the jump ball to in the end zone. That's good. But what about the rest of the field? Like, what about a guy who's going to get, and I look at Devontae Parker, I'm not trying to crush the guy, but statistically speaking, Devontae Parker had the least amount of separation in the entire NFL of all wide receivers that qualified, which was 10 targets or more. Think about that. Anybody who got 10 targets or more as a wide receiver this year, nobody had less separation than Devontae Parker. Mm-hmm. That's hard for a rookie quarterback to get him the ball when he's not getting separation, and it's tight window after tight window after tight window. You didn't see many tight windows Monday night in the national championship game. The guy was wide open everywhere. And a lot of it's the scheme, but a lot of it is the wide receiver getting open when he should be covered. And that's what I like about all of the Alabama wide receivers. And obviously I would take Chase from LSU as well. These guys might be the best wide receiver draft we've had, since last year. But these are really good wide receivers out there.
For sure. But I also wonder if you can get great value later, because out of the 6 wide receivers drafted in the first round, David, how many of those made the playoffs?
I believe I saw that tweet you sent out one day. I think it was 1 or 0. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And it is very hard to think that you would spend the number 3 overall pick on a wide receiver. And, I'm not the general manager. I'm not the head coach. And maybe you can get that once-in-a-lifetime offensive lineman from Oregon, number 3, and maybe not get the wide receiver you want at 18, but get one of the other ones. I'm not opposed to that. I would take Sewell 3 as long as you're guaranteeing me a wide receiver at 18, because he needs the weapons, and they have 2 more picks in the second round. So I'm optimistic that with 4 of the first 50 picks that the Dolphins are going to do right by their offense and get him some weapons. Because if everyone kept talking, and I don't even want to bring this up, but everyone keeps talking about the Deshaun Watson trade. If you're going to give up all your draft capital and Tua, and you're going to bring Watson in because he's Deshaun Watson, who wouldn't want him? He's still throwing to the same non-weapons that Tua was throwing to and that Fitzpatrick was throwing to. That doesn't really help you. Does it make your team better having Watson? Of course, he's Deshaun Watson. But Deshaun Watson throwing to Jakeem Grant isn't winning you an AFC East title. It's just that simple.
Yeah, well, unless Jakeem Grant was better than we saw, right? I mean, we do have some data points on that. And
sure.
And I think, for me, that high of a draft pick, maybe a trade down and hope that you can get them to and get some more draft capital. Yeah, it's true that none of those first-round teams did make the playoffs that drafted a wide receiver, and maybe it's an outlier, but if you look past the last 20, 25 years, not too many big receivers really won the Super Bowl. And maybe that's part of the Patriots. Because they won so many dang Super Bowls with just the Patriots way. That could have skewed those stats as well. But, it's an interesting concept, man. It's really interesting to think about. It's such a sexy pick, right? And he's a surefire, good wide receiver. But when you do draft a wide receiver in the top, people are going to focus on him, and so are defenses. Ohio State, I thought, did a terrible job. You bring up Stephon Diggs; he was drafted in the 5th round.
Yep.
Maybe you can find that gold. You look at Chase Claypool last year; he was drafted a little bit later, I think, late in the 2nd or 3rd. Yeah, Michael Thomas was a 2nd-round pick. So yeah,
and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I would say that the NFL in 2020. It's different than the NFL was even in 2015. College is different. The offenses are exploding. It's a different game, and you're not wrong. All 6 didn't make the playoffs. You can't really argue that point. But the Dolphins have shown that what they were missing, and to me, that's what the draft is. To me, the draft isn't, should you take a lineman because you have a top pick and you can get a receiver later? To me, it's all about filling the needs of your team and your franchise. If the Dolphins were a franchise that were a linebacker away from contending, I would take a linebacker. If the Dolphins were a franchise that was a corner away, I would draft a corner. I firmly believe the Dolphins are offensive weapons away from really contending. They went 10-6 this year, which, by the way, would have made multiple playoff spots in the NFC. You're in a conference that set historical numbers for the records that even the 7 seed was 11-5. They were as close as possible. They controlled their own destiny, and they had zero weapons on offense. The game they won against the Raiders, they had no tight end. They had no all-pro wide receiver that was out there, and they had running backs that no one ever heard of before the season started. So they need to build around them. They have 4 rookies on the offensive line, all of which had good seasons. It'll be year 2 for them. Gaskin was a good weapon, but that wasn't the game plan to roll with Myles Gaskin. You don't know how much Parker has left with his injury or how Williams comes back. At some point, you've got, and you know what? Maybe it isn't the draft. Maybe it's free agency. Maybe the Dolphins go get a Kenny Golladay or a Chris Godwin, and they don't have to take a wide receiver. Because if you go ahead and get a wide receiver that's already proven it, then go draft your lineman. Go draft somebody else, but you don't know what they're going to do in free agency.
Oh, absolutely. You made some great points and you backed it up. I think that the Dolphins are really close to winning. Obviously, 10-6, it sucked that you missed the playoffs. You should have made the playoffs. You're probably sitting there looking at the Bears making it 8-8, and I've been complaining, saying the Bears do not deserve to make the playoffs and they are frauds. And I'm saying that as a Bears fan, as you know. But it's crazy to me that in a 7-team year that makes the playoffs that the Dolphins didn't make it. And I think you are close to making it. And maybe it is time to get some receivers there. Maybe that's how close you are, right? But it sure doesn't help or hurt to fix your offensive schemes. And I thought that was another problem with the Dolphins. I thought your play calling wasn't that good on offense.
It wasn't at all. You had an offensive coordinator who obviously had been good in the past, but he was an older gentleman who had a very difficult time switching quarterbacks. And he was a Ryan Fitzpatrick guy from his Buffalo days, and he did not adjust to Tua. And, I'm not putting all the blame on Tua. It wasn't a great year for him, but you also had really crappy play calling. 100% agree.
Horrible play calling. I think that's going to be a big part of it as well. And the good thing you do have between Tua and Smith, some camaraderie right there, right? They know each other.
Absolutely.
They play with each other. So I think that's something that says for itself. And it's actually something that makes him just jump right into that role. So good stuff there, man. I saw you announced that sports betting is now part of the megacast here with ESPN, Between the Lines, right?
Yep. It was a one-off thing last Sunday because we had the game on ESPN. It was the Titans-Ravens game. So we were allowed, the NFL approved us doing it because the game was on our network. Unfortunately, we won't have it the rest of football season because none of the games are on our network. So it would have to be when we do have the game, and we're hoping that, possibly we could do it next year during our Monday Night Football or whatever package we have. But yeah, it was a very, very exciting thing to do. It's something that a lot of us have pitched for a long time at ESPN, and something that when sports gambling was being discussed 3, 4, and 5 years ago about what our company would do should they overturn PASPA, this was one of the things that was pie in the sky idea. Hey, we would love to do a betcast. And yeah, you're crazy. No way that's ever going to happen. The leagues won't allow it, blah, 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 blah. Well, come full circle, early 2021 and a playoff game on our air. The NFL allowed us to do the Between the Lines betcast, which was a lot of fun. And major props go out to the entire NFL Live crew with Orlovsky and Laura Rutledge, Marcus Spears for what they did on the NFL Live side. And obviously me being ingrained in helping with the Doug Kazarian, Joe Fortenbaugh, and Tyler Fulsham, it was an outstanding, awesome thing to do to, first of all, be back on campus. I hadn't been back on campus often since March. Mm-hmm. And to see us literally have a second screen opportunity to talk betting. And I mean, who thought that would happen? And here we were doing it. It was historic in nature. No one had ever done it before. And we had a live NFL game betcast, and it was really, really fun. We've gotten great feedback from it. We have lines on TV the entire time, and every time they kicked it to Vegas, Doug and Joe and Tyler did a wonderful job of talking about the live action and props that were going on. And I can only hope that we can get to do this more often in other sports. I know we talked about doing it in upcoming sports on our air, and then I would obviously let you guys know when we do it, and hopefully you guys will watch it and have as much fun as we had.
Oh, heck yeah, man. And it's all about what's going on currently in the game with the live betting, correct?
Yep, absolutely. What's going on with the live betting and, monitoring props throughout the game and just updating the fans and having an enjoyable second screen opportunity. And it's what it's really about, serving the fan. That's our motto. That's the ESPN mission statement. And what better way to serve the fan than to give them a second opportunity to watch the game on another device with betting talk during the entire time.
100%. When commercial comes up, switch to that, see what they're talking about, what Fortenball's talking about, Doug, whoever's on the show, and try to get their input on what could be some good value from a live betting perspective, right?
And that was completely strategic. If you noticed, every time the game went to a commercial, we went to Vegas. That was a strategic play that we had decided ahead of time. There's no better time to dial into live betting than when the action's not happening and people can look at their phone and say, all right, what bet should I take? Well, let me go listen first. So that was done on purpose, and it worked out pretty well, where during commercial breaks, we were talking betting.
Oh, that's so awesome. I'm so glad that ESPN has moved in that direction, too. One of the biggest networks out there, obviously the biggest sports network out there. So it's so cool to hear that, man. As an avid sports bettor and sports betting fan, God bless you guys. Great job out there, and I'm excited to check it out more. And I'm sure some of our listeners are going to benefit from that as well. So fantastic, man. Let's get into a little bit of games here. Then there's 4 big ones, as we know. And we'll start out right away on Saturday. The Rams playing the Green Bay Packers, and it's about 6.5. There was a 7 earlier. Total's about 45, 46. So what are your thoughts on this one?
But before we get to that game, I want to say that what I love about divisional round in the NFL is you look at 8 teams left, and it's hard to argue that any of the 8 teams don't belong. And I'm not crushing your Bears or Washington or anybody else, but in the wild card round, you're going to get teams that may or may not be in the top of the game. Like, obviously, Washington and Chicago had worse records than the Dolphins. But you look at the 8 teams remaining, and sure, you have an upset that happened with the Cleveland Browns. But all year long, the Browns were considered a good team, and they have an 11-5 record going into the playoffs. So you have 8 teams at 11-5 or better that are left. And that's what I love every year about the divisional round, is you really have probably 7 top teams in the league, and then you can do a coin flip as to whether the Browns are better than the Steelers. Yeah, they did beat them 2 straight weeks in a row. Mm-hmm. As far as the game that you're talking about, I'm leaning Packers on this one only because I really don't trust that the Rams have the full roster ready to go. You have quarterback issues, whether it's Goff or Wolford. We really don't know if either one of them are healthy, and then you have your Hall of Famer Donald back there. You don't know if Aaron Donald's going to play, and that's a big loss if he doesn't play. I'm assuming he's going to suit up, but I still think that there's a lot of risk out there that, you have a rested Green Bay Packers team playing in cold weather, where you have an LA team coming in with some guys banged up. Not sure I'd want to be a quarterback with a bum thumb throwing in freezing weather. The other factor that I look at, and you're going to see this in our column tomorrow, Joe Fortenbaugh actually wrote this, I'm looking at his draft right now, is look at what the Rams have gone through the last few weeks. They were in Seattle in Week 16 playing for the NFC West title. They hosted Arizona in Week 17 trying to hang on to a playoff berth. Then they went back to Seattle for a wild card round to advance, and now they're going to Green Bay with a whole bunch of injuries. To me, that takes a toll. And the offense was horrible versus the Rams in the first half. The pick 6 got them going, and then they against Seattle, and then the pick 6 got them going, and then they came out and did some good stuff in the second half. I just think the way these 2 teams are lined up right now, with the injuries on the Rams side and the rest on the Packers side, that this is Green Bay's game. Do I think Green Bay is going to win the Super Bowl? I don't know. They could, but I do think they beat the LA Rams, and so I would play the Packers on this one. It's not my favorite play, but I think the 6.5, as long as it stays under 7, is not a bad play. I see this as being somewhere around a 31-10 game.
All right, man. No, there's some good points. And one thing is concerning is that Goff is, not exactly a cold weather quarterback. Let's just say he hasn't performed great in the past, especially when he was at Cal. But you wonder if that's going to change at some point. And the biggest thing for me is that LaFleur was under McVay a few years back, and I mentioned this under a previous podcast. It's the classic student versus teacher. That might give LaFleur some advantage because LaFleur is an awesome coach and a 100% home run hire for the Packers. But at the same time, McVay's going to do whatever possible to be in this game. He's going to come up with some new schemes. I can't wait to see that battle. Obviously, you have your Ramsey versus Adams, which is going to be the coolest matchup in this whole game, right? I mean, that's just going to be so fun to watch, wide receiver versus the corner there. But 7's a little too much for me, but I will say that I think the Packers win it. I think it's going to be a 3-point game, and possibly a 6-point game. I took it at 7, and I would take it at 6.5, just because I think the total's pretty low, and it's good to take a dog when the total's actually starting to go down like that. So,
and I do like the under here as well. If I was going to pick a side or a total, I'd probably lean on the under because of the Rams defense, and you never know what the Packers are going to do off of a week off. That being said, I just think that the Packers are at this point significantly better than the Rams, and it's not a game that I'm going to play, but for the sake of the pod, I'm basically telling you that what I like is Green Bay and the under.
All right, I appreciate that. Sounds good. And this is going to be a really fun game, I think, and it's going to be cold. The weather's looking like it's holding up. So, I don't know if you're going to get any surprise snowstorms or sleet or freezing ice flying out of the sky in Green Bay. We'll see what we can get. But me being from the Midwest, I know too much about that. But I'm excited for a good game, and it's going to be really interesting watching these coaches match up. So I'm excited for that. Let's move on to the next one then, baby. Baltimore versus Buffalo. Buffalo about 2.5 points. The total of this one is about 50. Yeah, about 50 still, shockingly.
And this is a game that I actually really do love on the betting side. It's going to be in the column tomorrow. I did take Baltimore, and I took the under. And the Ravens, who have won their last 6 games ever since their COVID issues were cleared up and that whole Pittsburgh game got moved all over the place, they now are resembling the team that we saw that went 14-2 last year. I know that 14-2 team went into the playoffs and got shut down by the Titans, but this version of the Ravens just beat that version of the Titans. The defense is playing as good as it's played all year, less than 20 points in 6 of the last 7 games. The only one that they didn't was the shootout versus the Browns, and they totally shut down arguably one of the better offenses in the league with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, who had hit so many overs over the course of the year. After that 10-0 lead last week the Titans got, the Ravens' defense held them to 103 total yards on 31 plays. So I think that this Ravens defense is capable of shutting down Josh Allen and the Buffalo offense in the same way that they just did with the Titans. I know the Buffalo is more pass-happy than run-happy as the Titans were, but the way Buffalo has played over the last 6 weeks, they really are a team that can stop Buffalo. Buffalo's strongest trait, obviously, is its passing game, 3rd in the NFL at close to 300 yards a game. But who's 6th in the NFL against the pass? The Baltimore Ravens, who have held teams to 220 yards per game and just 150 yards per game over the last 4 games. So I do think that Ravens defense is something that can make the difference in this game, which is why I'm pushing the under a little bit. On the offensive side, nobody has been able to stop Lamar Jackson over the last 6 weeks. They're averaging 262 rush yards a game, with Lamar averaging about 94 a game. What is the Achilles heel for the Bills? Rush defense. 108 yards per game allowed, which is 20th in the league, and that was before they allowed 163 yards to the Colts. Colts not known for being a top running team. So I do believe the Bills are a team that can win the Super Bowl and can make a deep run. I just don't like them in this matchup. If this was Bills versus Browns or Bills versus Steelers, I'd be all over them. But I think this is the one team that the Bills are going to run up against and have some issues on both sides of the ball. So I'm going to take the Ravens in the 2.5. I'm probably going to sprinkle a little bit on the money line. And no one should be completely shocked and surprised to see the Baltimore Ravens in an AFC title game 1 year after they were the best team in football.
Great points. One thing I will say is if you do want the Ravens, I would wait. I would wait this baby out all the way to the end because especially if the Packers cover, you're going to see a ton of money coming on the Buffalo side with the favorite. They're going to bet the home team no matter what. And they're probably going to close this line at -3 plus 100 on the Buffalo side, +3 minus 120. Okay. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the books are going to really just try to prevent too much liability coming in on the Ravens because everybody that wants to bet the Ravens is waiting for that 3. But I think you're going to get it. And if the books get too much money on Buffalo, then then you might even get a flat for 3. But, like I'm saying, I think it's going to be -120 for a large portion of the time. Right before the game is when I think you nail this. Yeah, I mean, everyone's loving Buffalo. Buffalo would have won 11 in a row if they didn't drop that game to the Cardinals on that miracle pass, And Buffalo is hot, but they don't stop the run. But I mean, Sean McDermott, if he watched last week's game at all, and if he lets Lamar run all over him, if he lets his defensive end go way around or try to stunt inside where Lamar's just going to take off, if he lets his end fall for a read option where he stunts into the line, the running back, then they deserve to lose. I'll tell you right now. But Buffalo's defense has gotten better, and yes, they have definitely sucked against the run. I think 4.7 rushing yards per attempt is what they give up. And that's my biggest worry. But I think the coach might be able to figure that out. And I'm really excited to see this. One problem with the Ravens, why did they only score 20 points against Tennessee's awful defense that can't stop anybody? I'm wondering about that. And when it comes to the total, I like the over. And the reason that is because you had the over last week, 54.5, 55 with Buffalo versus, with the Ravens versus Tennessee, and Indianapolis should have went over at 51. I mean, that thing was stuck there. So I think that, if you like the Ravens, you probably like the under. And if you like Buffalo, you probably like the over. But I see multiple ways that this could go over and some garbage yards possibly at the end. One thing that Buffalo's been great at is jumping teams. So the Ravens were down and they proved that they could come back. Well, can Buffalo keep putting pressure on them? One thing about Josh Allen, he's going to run the ball. The Ravens blitz more than any team in the league. Is Josh Allen going to get some rushing yards? Because if Josh Allen's going to be able to run the ball, that's going to be a big thing for him for them to win this game. And I hope McDermott can say that for their sake, because he needs to take off and get some first downs and get some chunk yards, just like Lamar Jackson does, right? So that's Buffalo's chance. But either way, I'm excited for this game as well. And to be honest with you, go ahead, rip on the Bears. They didn't belong in the playoffs. Come on, man. I mean, the Dolphins belonged in the playoffs way more than the Bears did, and too bad that they were stuck in the AFC there. Right. In my opinion, and Washington was in by default just because that horrible NFC East division, man. So you don't have to hold back, man. Feel free to talk as much as you want about that. Let's move on to the next one here. Cleveland versus Kansas City. Kansas City -10. The total on this is now 57.5. Holy smokes, man. What do you got on this game?
This is a tough one to play, and if anybody read our column that Preston Johnson sent out on Sunday night as soon as the lines were released, we like to do an early first look, hop on those lines. His whole point was to take the Chiefs-Browns over as soon as possible. It was opened at 55. Get it before it moves. He was 100% right as it's moved 2.5 points. I listened to him. I jumped on it Sunday night at 55. Not sure I would touch it at 57.5, so I hope there are people out there who got it Sunday or Monday before it moved. As far as the line itself, this is a tough one because on one hand, how much do you believe in the Browns? Did they just play their Super Bowl last week? You're now facing the defending Super Bowl champions coming off of some rest. But that Chiefs team, as good as they are and very much looking at back-to-back Super Bowl rings out of this team, they also haven't covered lately. 6 of the last 7 they have not covered in. The one game they covered, they won by 3, and the line was 3 all week and dropped to 2.5. So there's a little bit of an asterisk next to it. So they have not been the Chiefs juggernaut that we're used to seeing, scoring 35 and 40 points and blowing out teams. That does give you pause when you're trying to think about laying 10. Do I think the Chiefs are 10 points better than the Browns? I absolutely do in my power rankings. But this Chiefs team seems to be asleep at the wheel in the first quarter of every game. They wake up in the second half, win it. No doubt they're going to win this game. Not sure I want to lay the 10 here. So it's a pass for me outside of the over 55 that I already took. If I had to play the side, I would lean towards laying the 10, thinking the Browns just played their Super Bowl, and it's hard to do that 2 straight weeks. And the Chiefs do have rest. And if you think about it, it's more than just 1 week. They didn't play anybody in week 17. So you're almost at 2 weeks off. If everybody's healthy, coming back, will they come out? Andy Reid's been phenomenal off of rest. One of the best coaches in the game with more than a week and a half to plan for. So I would lean Chiefs. In theory, they should crush the Browns. But what worries me is the fact that they have not played like the Chiefs that we're used to seeing, albeit a 14-2 team, but they have struggled to blow out teams.
Fantastic number there, David. And the sports cheetah nailed it for you guys. This thing is climbing, right? I mean, it might even get to a position, if it moves any more points, that you might want to buy back for half. It's just try to get cute, right? I mean, and I know you probably have a good bet there, and it sucks to throw away a winning ticket, but that's why sometimes you just buy back for half, and if you middle, then you're feeling extra sweet that day, and if you don't, you still want to bet. You're still up. So,
yep, and that was kind of the reason why I had him do that column starting last year was, it's a small audience who bets on Sunday night and Monday morning, but for those people who want to bet on Sunday night or Monday morning, they at least have someone, the sports cheetah, who is going to jump on those lines and absolutely give you the advice he gave. And that was the whole reason why we did that column.
Yeah, I read it last week, and I made the play before I read it, and then I commented and said, I'm on your side. I totally agree. We took the Bears under against the Saints because I didn't see the Bears scoring many points. Well, that thing went back down, so if you wanted to get that 48 and a half, you would have had to waited all the way to the almost game time for that. So I love that column. Great job there.
Thank you.
So my algorithm has the game -8, but at the same time, I think the Chiefs take off the gas, during the year. They're bored. They're just kind of toying with teams a lot during the year. To be honest with you, I could have swore a few of those games they really didn't care about if they won or lost, man, because it's almost like the Lakers watching them in the regular season. They know they're in the playoffs. Does it matter if they're a 1 seed? Does it matter if the 2 seed? Does it matter if it's the 3 seed? It felt like that to me. It's kind of like rest and health is more important, and a lot of these other sports are proving it. And when the regular season doesn't mean as much is when you start seeing teams not play so hard. And that's the beauty about college, right? You play your ass off every single game. Well, and that's why you can't have too many college football playoffs. I'm an advocate for 8, but I'm not an advocate for 16 or 20, right? I think the regular season needs integrity. But at the same time, I saw it with the Chiefs. I think they can just put it down whenever they want. I think this is when you will see their defense show up, right? I'm making a huge argument for them, but I'm probably not going to bet it because I can see a backdoor happen, and I do believe that Baker Mayfield's having a good season, and I do believe the Browns did deserve to win the playoffs. They did have it, or get in the playoffs. They had an easy schedule. That's very true. But, it's still hard to win 10, 11 games in the NFL, and you did it. Congrats. You belong in the playoffs. But for this game, I'm sitting back, eating some popcorn. I'm gonna enjoy it, man. That's what I hope for a high flying game. I think that's what we're hoping for here, bud. Let's get on to our last game then. Tampa Bay versus the New Orleans Saints. Saints -3. Total on this one is, I think, still 52. I bet these lines so early, I forget, man.
This one hasn't moved much. It's gone 3, 2.5, 3. The total's been pretty consistent. This one hasn't moved much, and I don't know if it's because people are waiting for the first 3 games or people are just not convinced one way or another. This is a tough one, and it's funny and ironic that they're playing together again for the 3rd time, because if there's one thing I have done well this year, it's read both of these teams well. There are certain teams that you and I know that you hate betting because you never know what the hell's going to happen. Historically, the Giants have been one of them, so have the Falcons, where you're just like, every week you look at the card and you're like, I have absolutely no idea. The Saints and the Bucks for me this year have been very, very readable. I was on the Saints in week 1 against the Bucks. I rode the Bucs winning streak. I knew when to get off the Bucs when they played the Saints again. And people were like, oh, the Bucs are going to come back and beat the Saints in revenge. I'm like, nope, the Saints are that much better. I read it right. They won 38-3. That was my play in the column. And then, of course, I've hopped back on the Bucs at the end of the season. A lot of Bucs team total overs I've been playing, and they've gone 31, 47, 44 to end the season. So I've been able to read them well, and then they're going to play each other. So what do? Well, the whole adage that you can't beat a team 3 straight times, let's flush that one down the toilet, okay? In the last 20 years, 14-7 for teams that won the first 2 matchups in terms of winning the game. So you can beat a team 3 times in one season. As far as the spread, it's even. It's 10-11-1. There's nothing there to see. So playing a team 3 times overall means absolutely nothing. What I'm focusing on is what have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers done? Well, they've won 5 in a row. They've beaten the Vikings, the Falcons, the Lions, the Falcons, Washington. Minnesota, Atlanta, Detroit, Atlanta, Washington. That's not good. Before that, they lost to the Chiefs. They lost to the Rams. They lost to the Saints. They have beaten bad teams. They are good enough to destroy bad teams, but they have struggled against your Bears when the Bears were actually good for 5 minutes. Struggled against the Saints, struggled against the Rams, struggled against the Chiefs. Didn't look great last week against Washington. The Saints are the better team, and where do you get the Bucs? Where does anybody get the Patriots last year? Getting to Tom Brady. Who can get to Tom Brady? A front 4 like the New Orleans Saints. Just like the Rams did, and just like your Bears did. Teams that can get to the quarterback will have success against Tom Brady-led teams. That has been the knock against him for years. You put pressure on him, you will beat him. The Saints have a defense that quietly is a top 5 defense in the NFL, and they will get to Tom Brady, and I believe they will win for the 3rd time. I am putting stock in how much they dominated the first 2 games. I'm willing to roll that back again. I'm going to play the Saints in this one.
A Dolphins fan fading Tom Brady. Shocking.
I haven't had much success in
Shocking. My life. But you're absolutely right, man. You nailed it. I'm on the same exact side as you. There is no 3rd time is the charm. Saints are just better. They know how to prepare better. The reason we're getting this 3 is because of the Bears game last week. That was kind of a fluke. The Saints would have beat them no matter what. You know, it was just a couple mishaps that happened, but there's not one time that I thought that the Bears actually had even a close of a chance to get into that game, right? And they backdoored the Saints and still didn't cover the spread. The Saints defense.
Although you ruined my night by getting that touchdown, followed by not getting the extra point or 2-point conversion. All of a sudden, me and Mr. Purdom had to go figure out how to cover that. That being said, you're absolutely right. The Bears were never in that game. The Saints defense, everyone thinks about the New Orleans Saints and they think Breeze, Thomas, Kamara, blah, blah, blah. They have a solid defense. This is a team that I picked to go to the Super Bowl before it started. I think on this show, I said Saints, Chiefs. That's where I'm going. I'm still staying with that because I still think the Saints are the best team in the NFC. I think they can beat Green Bay, and I think they're going to take care of business in the Dome against Tampa. You mentioned that part of the reason we're getting this line is because the Saints' performance against the Bears. I actually think it's also because the Bucs have won 5 straight. Everybody loves Tom Brady. Everybody loves great offenses, and you have Gronk and Godwin and Fournette and Brady. It's like a Hall of Fame team that have beaten a bunch of nobodies. You can beat Atlanta. You can beat Detroit. You can beat Washington. You're not beating the New Orleans Saints.
Well, there you go, man. And I 100% agree. My power ratings has the Saints about 1.25 points better on a neutral field. So, at the Dome here, you got to give them a few for a home field advantage. The Saints beat them by double digits. You mentioned every single team that they beat the last stretch there. Washington, Detroit, horrible teams. The Atlanta twice. Jesus, man. Yeah, if you get to Brady, you can rattle him a little bit. I don't think Brady's going to get some of the benefits that he did with the Patriots from a flag standpoint. I love the Saints in this position at -3, and I think it's a good play. You might see some 3.5s pop, and so I kind of say if you get the -115 on the 3, I'd go for it. I'd be really worried about trying to get enough Tampa Bay money. I think the sharper side is going to be the Saints, in my opinion. So I like that, and I put a couple stars on it myself. So great stuff, David. 100% agree. Where can our listeners go to find your shows and sports betting content?
Absolutely. We have Daily Wager is on usually at 6 o'clock in ESPN2 5 days a week. It's actually coming on at 4 o'clock on Thursday, but it should be back at 6 o'clock on Friday. It's also going to be on Saturday and Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. In terms of the chalk content, go to www.espn.com chalk or just Google ESPN chalk. You're going to get our best bets tomorrow morning, as well as Mike Clay's props guide that will be out as well for the playoffs. Or just follow me on Twitter at @DBearman ESPN. That's DBEARMAN ESPN. I always send out our pieces there, and most of them are ESPN Plus articles, but you can also get our Nugget stuff for free out there.
All right, great stuff. Make sure you guys check that out. ESPN is exploding in the sports betting industry. Now it's time for our college basketball plays for the weekend. And as you know, we have to predict some of these lines because the lines just do not come out yet. But we usually do a good job, and we're going to get right into it. Friday, we have Purdue Fort Wayne versus UW-Milwaukee. It's going to be around a 4-point spread. The total is going to be around 145 opening up. This is a nice little Horizon League matchup where you can find some value within some of these numbers, hopefully. Purdue Fort Wayne is a fine little team that plays pretty fast, 16.2 seconds per possession and 72.8 adjusted tempo. The Mastodons have a nice field goal percentage, a nice effective field goal, 59%. But they haven't played anybody out of their league. They also have a really nice player in Jalen Pipkins. He transferred from Loyola, and he's a good complement to their best player, Jared Godfrey. Okay, the rest of the team's a little suspect, though. The big problem with Purdue Fort Wayne is that they don't play defense, and they turn the ball over. Purdue Fort Wayne ranks 287th on KenPom in defensive efficiency and 339th in turnover rate. 339th, that's pretty bad. Not a good recipe on the road facing a Milwaukee team that ranks 22nd in steal percentage. Second in defense within their conference. UW-Milwaukee is a nice 6-1 ATS, but what's even more impressive to me is that they are plus 7.6 ATS margin, which means that the books and KenPom hasn't caught up to them yet. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored this game, and I also think that the turnovers is going to sink Fort Wayne. I'm going to take both the Panthers, Milwaukee, and the over. I'm going to wait to see if I can get a better number. I'm hoping that I can get a 3.5. I'll take it at 4 if I have to for 1.5 stars. And I'm going to take the over for sure. Over 145 for 2 stars. On Saturday, Big Ten matchup, Ohio State versus Illinois. Illinois will be about a 5-point favorite. The total on this is 146. This is a great matchup here in the Big Ten. Ohio State's looking like a team that will be dancing in a few months. Nice wins versus Rutgers twice, and two bad teams in the Big Ten, Northwestern and Nebraska by double digits. Now, Illinois has been very up and down this year. They're coming off a pretty bad loss against Maryland, and we were on Maryland on Sunday. They should be better than what they are right now. Sites like Bart Torvik can tell that. They still have Illinois in the top 10, even though they have 4 losses. I think Bart Torvik's correct. Illinois has a better defensive ranking, 19th in efficiency, while Ohio State ranks 58th. Advantage Illinois. Besides defense, another thing that I want to look at is who's going to be hitting the shots in this matchup. Illinois ranks 11th in the nation at 59% effective field goal percentage, while Ohio State ranks 134th. They can definitely miss some shots from time to time. After that Maryland loss, Illinois gave the game away. I mean, it was kind of I felt bad for Illinois, but I had that money line sprinkle for Maryland. Felt pretty good. But, they controlled the game the whole time. They only shot 41% from the field when they averaged 51% shooting. Okay? I like the bounce back. The important thing for me is this handicap factors in the strength of schedule as well. Illinois, they already played Baylor, Duke, and the better Big Ten teams, not the top two, with not Michigan, not Iowa, but Ohio State. They haven't played a tough schedule. Their toughest team that they played was UCLA, right? And obviously Rutgers, Northwestern, and Nebraska aren't exactly the best teams in the Big Ten, especially because Rutgers have been so banged up lately. I'm taking Illinois in this spot, in the big bounce back spot. I'm going to lay the 5 points here. It's going to be 2.5 star premium shared play.
Kip, I reckon you know a lot about cyberspace. You ever come across anything like time travel?
Virginia versus Clemson, -4. The total on this thing is going to be about 114. My friends, you're going to look at this 114, and you're going to probably want to take the over, but I'm just going to warn you right now that these two teams, Virginia and Clemson, is probably going to try to have the longest pissing match. You know, that thing you did with your kid to see who could piss the longest, which means who's going to hold the ball the longest. I mean, these guys have great Ds, but they want to prove whose D is better, so they're just going to slow this game down, and they're going to play extremely great defense. So just to let you know, if the public takes this thing too high, I will probably play the under. 118 will be my striking point for this total. All right. Just want to mention this, and there is going to be people thinking that's just too low of a total. But in my opinion, these teams want to show you how methodically slow and boring that they're going to be. So just wanted to throw that game out there in case this total gets too high. Next game, Michigan versus Minnesota. Minnesota should be about a +5.5. I'm hoping for more. Over under 146. I mean, the Gophers played Michigan a few weeks back and lost by 25 points. Oh, brutal. Michigan, best ATS team in the Big Ten, 9-2. They shocked Wisconsin last time. He really celebrated it as well. And Wisconsin could not get a shot off. Michigan's hardcore defense stuffed them, kind of shell-shocked them a little bit. But Michigan's been beating teams like by margin, which worries me. And their closest game was at home versus Penn State, believe it or not, when they only won by 4 points. When's the stinker going to happen again? And that's what we're trying to figure out. Can this happen again this week? Well, I'll tell you this. Minnesota is a much better home team than an away team. And that's why I think that you're going to get some line value here. I mean, I'd hate to get in the way of somebody that's just been killing it ATS like Michigan. But this might be the spot that you want to look at, right? Because, they figure that they handled Minnesota already. Very possible that they're thinking that. And they could be even looking past Minnesota a little bit. I mean, they do have Maryland on deck, and they beat Maryland. But Minnesota, who knows? So, in my opinion, Minnesota could be playing out of their minds tonight. Or Friday night. You're getting this on Friday, so it's tonight. All right? Gophers 16-8-1 against the spread at home since 2019. All right? That's pretty big. They have big home road splits. Michigan had only 2 away games this year against Nebraska and Maryland. All right? Only 2. So, Michigan, since 2019, 6-7 against the spread as an away team. I'm going to wait on this baby as long as possible. All right? I'm going to wait till whole public gets on Michigan here. I'll take it at 5.5. I won't love it at 5.5, but if I can get a 7 or something like that, it's going to be golden. We'll take Minnesota here. If it's at 5, it's no play, but 5.5 will be 1.5 stars. 7's going to be 2.5 stars. So just look at it that way.
Duh. Winning.
All right, the last game we have is Sunday, Iowa versus Northwestern. Northwestern plus 10. The total is 156. Iowa's getting a nicely earned week off after the Michigan State COVID issues. As you know, we talked about that a little bit on Adam's podcast, ats.io, and they get to stay home. It's kind of nice. They get a week off. Northwestern, very strange team. They dropped 4 in a row, Big Ten games in a row, before winning 3 in a row. You thought Northwestern could have been a force. Everyone kind of jumped on them. I lost a few ATS against them, unfortunately, these last 2 ugly swings. But the big thing Northwestern does differently than last year is they really picked up the pace. In 2019-20, they ranked 211th in seconds per possession at 17.6, to 31st this year in the league at 15.5. They're pressing teams, okay? Playing. I don't mean press defense. I mean, they're just putting pressure on teams, trying to get the ball in that hoop, trying to run up scores. Well, it's not working that well for them because they're starting to lose by decent margin. But one thing that's been happening is that their defense has been giving up a ton of points, over 80 points per game in each of those 4 games in a row that they lost. I mean, they now rank 12th in Big Ten defensive efficiency. Okay? Iowa, on the other hand, plays lightning fast, as we all know, and they only slow the game down at the end if they're blowing a team out. They rank first, tied with the Gonzaga in offensive adjusted efficiency on KenPom, 123.5. That means for every possession, they get 1.235 points. Okay? That's what that means. Iowa's defense, on the other hand, ranks a modest 7th in the Big Ten. I think this Wildcat team is desperate. They're going to be playing desperate, and they should be putting up some points here. I mean, they are playing at home here, and when I said Iowa gets to stay home, it means they don't have to go anywhere, but they still have to go to Northwestern, from what I said before, just to clarify. But anyways, more importantly, I think this game's going to go over. All right? I think that Iowa's going to put up probably 90, but I'm playing it safe at 88. According to my calculation, I have it 88-76, winning by about 12 points. That's not a big enough deviation from 10. I mean, if I can get something like a 9, I'll probably bet Iowa. But Northwestern is desperate, so I like the over even more. All right? I like the over and the first half over. You're probably going to get a first half total around 77 or 78. I like it to 79. And I like the full game over around 156. So, in my opinion, this is going to be an overplay. Don't shy on it because both these teams play lightning fast.
Well, Lottie frickin' duh!
All right, my friends. That's all we have for our podcast this week. If you enjoy our podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast platform. If you have any questions, please tweet us at the Odds Breakers. If you are a handicapper and would like to contribute, please also DM us at the Odds Breakers. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your week. Remember to stay safe, enjoy the games, and go get some